Hey Computer, play About Bees podcast.
Well, hello everybody, and welcome back to a very special episode of About Bees, Culture, and Curiosity with Ron and
Bidzina and Jessie. Go ahead, Jessie, our guest here today. Introduce yourself.
Yeah, I'm Jessie Smulders. I am a beekeeper, wax making craft lover, and I'm super excited to be here today just to chat about beeswax. It's
Beeswax. Oh, it's none of your beeswax.
No, it's none of your beeswax.
No, it's
Ron.
none of your beeswax. This beeswax belongs to Worker and Hive, I think, doesn't it? Most of it?
Well, I guess it depends.
Yeah. Oh, it depends.
Depends,
It
yeah.
depends. That's what we always say in beekeeping. It just depends.
Just
It
depends. That's right.
So,
Yeah.
Jessie, we are recording today from Worker and Hive, and we are
Yeah.
going to do a very special episode with you you teach a lot of courses in making candles and working with wax and making other products with wax. Is that right?
Yeah. This year we have really created quite a few different programs. We have some wax workshops that go kind of into depth about wax processing. They're really aimed for the beekeeper, for the hobbyist beekeeper. We have infused honey classes. We're learning to infuse honey, to make salves, to make balms. And then something that's really exciting this year is our new Make It Nights. And that's
Make It Nights?
Yeah, we're doing some Make It Nights, and we had a
So
few
for these
before Christmas.
Make It Nights, do you close down those, because you don't have curtains, do you?
No.
No.
It's pretty open, so everybody can see what we're doing.
Okay.
Spike the curiosity.
Okay.
But we're doing Make It Nights. We had a couple before Christmas, and they are definitely proving to be one of my most favorite events, where people can come and they can experience the joys of working with beeswax. We have candle making Make It Night, and we're doing a lip balm Make It Night, a food wrap Make It Night coming up in February. So I'm really excited about those, because that's really where my passion is to share that with people.
And that's the paper wax that you're referring to?
For which? The food wrap?
Yeah, the food wrap.
Yeah, so it's a beeswax covered cotton, and you use it to wrap things like cheese, or you can put over glass bowls, things like that, and it's like nature's saran wrap.
Interesting. Yeah, because
Yeah.
I've seen it online, and even a friend recommended it to me. She said that that's all she uses to store her food.
Yeah, so it's pretty amazing stuff.
So can you describe it just a little bit more? Because it is not something that I've ever made, or I don't even know if I've ever received food that's been wrapped in
Wow.
this wax paper.
I know what I'm getting you next Christmas.
Some candy wrapped in the special paper that you make.
Some chickpeas in wax wrap.
Oh, I would like that. Yeah. Okay. So tell me a little bit about this paper then before we
Yeah, so
get
it's
too much
called
further.
beeswax food wrap.
Okay, beeswax food wrap.
Yes, so there are a couple of ways you can make it. Some people will make it just with beeswax. So essentially what it is you are taking 100% cotton material,
Oh,
and you are saturating it in wax.
okay.
I find that using just a straight beeswax gets you a little bit thicker of a coating, which is not necessarily better. So more is not better in this case.
Okay.
I like to use, a kind of a mixture of jojoba oil, pine resin, and
Turpentine.
beeswax.
Pine resin is turpentine, isn't it?
Yeah.
Really? Come on.
Yeah, so the pine resin is amazing. It has some really good properties, and it makes your wrap a little more pliable. So as you're wrapping
I
it
see. So it
over
doesn't
things like a
crack and
bowl
everything,
or around a block of cheese, over a half of an avocado, it really helps seal the food, so you're
Right.
not getting that browning in avocado.
Right.
The pine resin helps with that pliability, so that you can mold it
Yep.
kind of around your bowl.
Yep.
You put it in the fridge. I wrap my kids' sandwiches in it for their school lunches, things like wraps. We made some little nice wrap bags, and so it's a really fun thing to make. It's quite easy, and it's a really great thing to use. So maybe we'll have to send you home with some today.
Oh, that'd be great. Do you think we can make some here today?
I would love to make some today.
We're jumping ahead just a little bit because what we're talking about today, of course, is beeswax. And I think there are a few people who are listening who won't even know what beeswax is, where it comes from, how the beekeeper or others can get the wax from a colony of bees. So why don't we back up just a little bit and talk about this?
Yeah, I'd love to. I could talk about beeswax all day.
Okay.
So let's...
I'll try to put visuals as much as possible during the beeswax part when we're talking about like how they make it and stuff like that and where it comes from.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, so beeswax is a product that the bees produce. They use it primarily to build their homes. So they're building their hexagonal honey or comb. I shouldn't say honeycomb. It's not all for honey. They're building their comb. They're using it to lay their eggs in to reproduce. They're using it to store honey, and then we're using it for many, many things.
You're stealing it from the bees to
we're
do
stealing
your
it.
own human kind of purposes.
So beeswax does have quite a rich history.
Yes.
It's been used for hundreds and hundreds of years, thousands of years even, back to, I would say, the Han Dynasty in China is kind of the first time that's documented that they're using beeswax for cosmetics, actually.
Okay.
And they're using it for candle making. We see really early use of beeswax in places like Egypt for embalming dead bodies. And of course,
not live bodies, folks. They
good
only
thing they're dead.
embody dead.
Yeah, unless you're using it as a beauty product. They often use that for things like, they'll use it with a mixture for things like a hand dip and stuff like that.
A hand dip.
Yeah,
so
where you
is
put
that
your
hot
hand
wax?
in. It is a warm wax, yeah.
A warm wax.
You mix it with oil and there's a whole
Okay.
thing. So...
But the beeswax, again, I feel again like we've skipped ahead just a little bit. So these little bees, just to be clear on this, they do not fly out to a flower and find a speck of wax and carry it back with them.
No, they're using nectar or a sugar source of some kind, whether that be something that the beekeepers are feeding them, like a sugar syrup, a nectar that's found naturally in plants. And they're using that, and then they're producing the wax through their wax glands.
They have wax glands.
They have a wax gland.
Are they similar to the wax glands in my ears?
I couldn't comment on that.
Okay.
I'm not
I
overly
think it is.
familiar with
You
your
think
ear wax glands.
Yeah, you haven't
Yeah.
looked close. You want to look at my...
Yeah, go check it out later.
No, better not do that. Okay, so they do have wax glands, and those glands are on the bottom of their abdomen.
They are.
Abdomen. And I think, if I remember right, they have 8 separate glands, four on each side
Yes.
of their abdomen, and those glands are secreting little tiny clear white, like they are
Like
clear.
little flecks. They're very small.
Yep,
Yeah.
Yep. So wax originally is totally clear and white. It gets its color because it's in a hive where there's pollen, and if it's from the brood nest, it can be really dark wax because of all the staining from the brood that had been developing there. So this is where it comes from. So the bees, to produce wax, they need, what things do you think they would need to ideally be producing wax?
They will need a sugar source.
The sugar source, you
Yeah.
mentioned that. So
Yeah.
usually that would be nectar. Like
It
in
would
the
be,
wild, of
yeah.
course, it would always be
It
nectar.
would always be nectar.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Now, I've heard that, well, I've read, not heard, that it takes 7 to 8 pounds of honey to make 1 pound of beeswax.
Right. That's what
Yes.
people have calculated and they've
Yeah.
measured. And yes, that's right.
Yeah.
So
So that's a lot of honey
especially
to make.
if it's nectar.
is, yeah.
If it's not honey but nectar, then
Right.
it could be like 5 to 10 times as much nectar. So they would have to be bringing in a lot of, and usually I think it is nectar. I don't think they eat honey
I don't think
and
so
turn it into
either.
wax. I think
No.
it has to be a fresh source that they're collecting, and that seems to stimulate their bodies.
It does.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So that's why feeding them sugar water.
Yeah, and often beekeepers will things like new packages of bees or new nukes of bees that are going into equipment that requires a lot of wax production, beekeepers will focus on feeding a light sugar syrup to encourage bees
to stimulate those glands that we're
Yes.
going to secrete the wax.
Yeah, and
I
you're
find that
seeing the
works for
youngest
me
bees.
too, because I always have more earwax, during the winter when I'm eating a lot of candies. So
Well, maybe there's a link
there
there.
is a link. I
Yeah.
think we've proven it now. We have a
Have you
You have to study that one next.
Yeah.
have you slowly become a bee over these many years?
only during the winters.
Well,
Yeah. I
Oh,
slowed
it's
down.
opposite.
I become a winter bee. Okay, so we know now where the wax comes from. And actually, in preparation for chatting with you, I did just a little tiny bit of looking things up. And I found, and this really shocked me, that it takes 1,100 of these little flakes of wax that come off of the bee, 1,100 of those, to make 1 single gram of wax. And
Which is very small.
that's a very, very small amount.
Yeah.
And I think I actually have some wax. I usually carry some wax in my pocket.
Oh,
Well, in case.
just in case.
Yeah, in case. So this I weighed this morning, and what I'm
Okay.
holding, I could actually pretty much hide in my fist. So it's a chunk of beeswax, for those people who can't see us but are listening, a chunk of beeswax that weighs 6 grams. So that means that there had to be about 7,000 little tiny flakes coming off the bees in order to make that little chunk of wax. And if you think, okay, 1 gram requires 1,100 flakes, then 1 kilogram, which is 2.2 pounds, so a kilo of wax would take 1,000 times as much, which is 1,100,000 flakes of wax to just make 1 single kilo. And Bidzina, what did you say the number, the ratio is? How much honey or how much sugar power do they need to consume to make like that 1
So
kilo?
from 8 to 1, you
Yeah.
were saying?
Yeah.
So-
8 to 1?
8 pounds.
So that's the 8 kilos in this example case. So 8 kilos of honey, about 17 pounds of honey, have to be consumed by the bees to make a kilogram of wax, which is over 1 million tiny flakes.
Right.
Yes.
Okay, so anybody
Just to
out there
put it
who
into
thinks that we're
perspective.
not hurting the bees and we're not being mean to the bees, think about that.
Maybe.
And what we're gonna do then is
Because
we're gonna take that wax and we're going to form it into candles and we're
You-
gonna burn it.
You would
Well, when you put it that way,
you would think for something that's so hard to make for them that they would be more conservative, but they're very liberal with it. They just put that stuff everywhere sometimes.
they
Good
do
point.
put wax everywhere. That
Yeah.
is true. And you can surprisingly harvest quite a bit of wax
Yeah.
without essentially stealing it from the hive, where you're, every time you're going in, you're collecting that little burr comb.
Right.
And the
If
burr
they're
comb
not
is what
using
they're
it-
building on top of frames.
Yeah.
In kind of any open spaces that they're
Exactly
leaving.
right,
You
exactly
get a little
right.
container as you're
Yep.
beekeeping, you
Yep.
pop it in there, and it's surprising in a
It
year.
adds up. Yeah,
how
it
much
adds
you've
up.
collected.
And that's no different, folks. That's no different because the bees are not using it. It's just going to waste. It's no different than going down any street in any city and just seeing a car parked there that nobody's using. Just drive away with it because it's just sitting there. It's not being used, right?
Okay. What about if you're on a highway and there's apples growing?
Yes.
It's nobody's
I
apple
definitely
tree.
like
Oh.
that a little bit better of an analogy,
You
for
wouldn't-
sure.
You wouldn't imagine how many people I had to run out of orange groves because as a beekeeper in Florida, which I was for about 10 years, I would go into orange groves where my beehives were kept, and so many times, probably 5 or 6 times every winter, I would come across somebody with a New York license plate tag or a Wisconsin plate tag on a car, and they're parked there, and they're picking grapefruit and oranges and tossing it into the back seat of their car. And then I come up behind them, and I wish I had in those days would have been red flashing lights, but I wish I could have, had a badge or something, because they were stealing. And then I pointed this out a couple of times. Well, they're just falling on the ground. Are you picking them from the ground? No, but they would fall. Okay. So
I think we digressed a little bit there.
We always digress. We're no fun unless we digress.
I guess that's true.
So we have our beeswax that the bees aren't using, and we can take that and put it in our little buckets and bring it back to our shed, our house, our kitchen. What do we do with it then?
Well, there's a number of ways we can process beeswax. Most of them are very, very messy.
Ooh.
So it is a messy process. A lot of the beeswax that hobbyists are getting, or smaller scale, is going to be wax that's coming out of the hive as capping wax. So that's the wax that as we're harvesting our honey, we're going to be scraping off of our honey. So capped.
Okay.
Capped honey.
So just like you've been telling us that we can seal food to keep it clean and fresh by making this maybe beeswax papers and so on, the bees naturally do that.
They do, yes. So they're kind of preserving their honey stores as well.
Okay.
When they get it to a moisture they're satisfied with, they're going to put a little door on that cell, cap it over with beeswax, and to preserve it for later. So when we're extracting that honey, we have to take those little wax cappings off, and that's where a lot of the wax that we're harvesting is coming from. So as opposed to, taking those off and getting rid of it, you can process it into some pretty amazing things. So you're kind of leaving no part of that process.
Okay.
You're not letting it go to waste.
So as we're stealing their honey,
we're also stealing their wax for our own benefit, but we're going to treat them really nicely.
I hope we do.
In the whole process.
Yeah, let's do treat our bees our honeybees as well as we can. So you mentioned processing the honey and removing this little filament, this little strip, this little capping that's over the cells of honey. And that is beeswax, just like the cells themselves are beeswax. So how much beeswax would you get? Let's say you're extracting about 100 pounds of honey.
Not as much as you'd think.
No?
You're going to get maybe a couple of pounds.
Okay, a couple of pounds.
Yeah,
right.
And so when you're uncapping all of your frames, you're going to get a lot of honey. You're going to get some, specks of stuff in there, and it's going to be dirty wax that's not ready to be used. So capping wax, the same as, when you're scraping burr comb off of your frames, that extra wax they're building throughout the hive, you're going to need to be rendering that wax. And so there's a process to get it
rendering,
clean
that's a word
and
I
ready
haven't-
for use.
Yep. So rendering.
Rendering, yeah. So it's a process of cleaning your wax, of removing the honey, any of the impurities, and getting it ready to use, whether that be for cosmetics or candles or food wraps. There's a lot of uses.
Is this similar method to rendering fat, or like rendering beef tallow, or because there are different ways to render beeswax, right? What would you say is kind of the best or kind of the easiest? I think throw it in a tub of water and boil it and just wait for it to separate.
You definitely can use water. I don't have any experience with rendering fat. I've not ever tried that.
Okay.
Maybe I'll have to add that to my repertoire at some point. But so I don't know how it compares. But there are, like you said, a number of ways that you can go about rendering or cleaning your beeswax.
Right.
And so a lot of times when you're looking on YouTube, you're looking for some videos, how to render your wax, how to remove the honey, and often you're seeing the Crockpot method. So I'm
Yeah.
not sure, have you seen the Crockpot method? Maybe tried it before?
Okay. Are you going to be able to show us how to render here later, or do you
I
want to take
wasn't
the...
going to,
Okay,
but
so-
we are going to look at some different wax at different stages. Yeah,
Yeah,
I'm not going to go through it step by step
Then
because
the
it does take
Crockpot,
quite.
like what does that mean, the Crockpot method?
So the Crockpot method
Or the
is
crackpot,
fairly
the crackpot method of
is
working with
very
beeswax.
common way for people to render beeswax. A lot of people have Crockpots kicking around. You can get them at secondhand stores. It's a relatively inexpensive way to go.
Just
You're-
a regular old crock
So
pot.
regular old crock pot. So
Okay.
you're going to be putting all your wax, I recommend, in a bag of some kind. So you can use an old pair of nylons. You can use a few layers of cheesecloth, and then you're going to tie it up like in a bundle. You could use
So this can be a plastic bag?
no.
Nylon?
Nylons like nylons that women
Oh,
wear.
okay.
Do they have to
Yeah.
be old? You said you use an
Well, they
old pair of...
definitely should. I would probably wash them if they're old, but go to the drugstore, spend a couple bucks.
Okay.
Like the pantyhose?
Like
or-
pantyhose,
Oh, I
yes.
see.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Now
Yeah.
I'm getting interested because we're going to
pantyhose.
be
So-
rendering the wax through pantyhose.
definitely
and then we're
can.
going to be using that to cover my food.
So don't use dirty pantyhose.
Okay, we're going to
Hey,
use
these
new
things take a little bit
pantyhose
of, I'd like
or-
to say, common sense.
Okay, common
so
sense.
let's not get some really dirty pantyhose. Go by the drugstore. You can pick them up cheap, the dollar store.
Yes.
Or use cheesecloth.
Cheesecloth.
Cheesecloth, okay? So you can make a few layers of that. You lay it out. You put all your cappings in there. You tie it up into a little bag.
Mm-hmm.
You can also use those jelly bags. They're like a strainer bag you'd use to put like all your, let's say, raspberries in if you're making jelly, where you want
Right.
the seeds to be strained out. So
Sure.
anything that's going to act as a strainer of sorts.
Mm-hmm.
So something very fine.
I'll tell you, I am way more comfortable thinking about cheesecloth as the
Okay.
way that this wax that's going to be used to cover my food
Okay.
is being
I li-
rendered.
I do like cheesecloth as well, and you could usually get a roll of it somewhere
Well,
for...
you can buy it at the dollar store for a couple of dollars as well.
Can you buy
Well,
it from
but
Worker
they're
and
really
Hive
expensive,
in
but-
Calgary, Alberta?
You cannot, no.
No. Well, you should start a
We
line
just-
of cheesecloth.
We just can't compete with the dollar store on the cheesecloth. So I would
You
say
could be a loss leader. You could buy it from them and sell it just a little bit cheaper just because people will be coming in
Ro-
to buy that. And then
Yeah.
they'll pick up an extractor.
Robert's going to start drop
maybe.
shipping.
yeah,
Right.
yeah, we're going to get into the cheesecloth market.
You
Okay.
just describe drop shipping, Ron.
Yeah.
That's what all the kids are
that's,
doing.
That's what we should be
That's what
doing.
the kids
yeah.
are doing these days.
Yeah.
They are. Everyone is telling me in my, they're like,
We rarely go on, out of our path. We stay focused on exactly what we're talking about here in this podcast. But please do describe what drop shipping is, Bidzina, because I don't really think I know what it is.
So it's you set up a website, you find a supplier, and then you don't even buy the physical merchandise. You pretty much have a website that you sell. You tell people that you have merchandise. They make the orders, and then it gets shipped from your supplier for 10 times the markup.
Isn't that what Jeff Bezos does all the time? Isn't that
Exactly.
It's
yes.
exactly like
That
Amazon.
sounds like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Small scale.
Oh, good
Yeah.
for him.
But he has
and
a
good for
warehouse,
those
yeah.
youngsters that are trying the same thing. One of them
He's inspired them.
There
yeah,
you go.
yeah. Okay, so that's drop shipping, and that's what Worker and Hive does not do.
We do not do that.
No.
No. If you want cheesecloth, you're going to have to
Go to
get
the
it from the
dollar
dollar
store.
If you
Okay.
want some good beeswax advice, then you come here.
Okay.
Yeah.
And we're drop shipping some good beeswax advice today on this podcast.
We are. Yeah.
You
Yes.
should
Yeah.
ship some package bees somewhere, maybe.
Packaged bees.
maybe.
I don't know. I guess you could do that. What made you think of packaged bees?
No, just like when you say the word drop ship,
Mm-hmm.
and then I saw a bee company make like this funny post on April 1st. It's like, deliver bees to your enemies.
Oh, I like that idea.
Talk
Okay.
about being mean to bees.
Yeah.
Ship them to your enemies.
Yes.
What are they going to do to those poor bees?
No, they might become beekeepers and go in competition with you. That's probably not the best
I hope
idea.
so.
I would think they would. So rendering with the crock pot, with the cheesecloth, and
you're going to add water to the crock pot.
oh, okay.
And then you're putting this little satchel that you've made of dirty wax
Mm-hmm.
in your crock pot, and you turn it on.
Yep.
And you
Now
let
turn it on at what kind of temperature?
I would do a medium temperature. Wax is very flammable. So if you overheat it, you first can wreck the wax. You know, it's going to degrade it being overheated.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's at about 185 degrees Fahrenheit, somewhere around there to start to burn, won't it?
Yeah, and you're
Like
just
to
getting darker
darken.
wax. You're going to lose some of that really lovely scent as well
Okay.
as you're
That-
overheating your wax. So you want to keep it a bit lower. When you're doing this, you don't want to put this on and go to work. This is not chilly. You want to do it on a day you're hanging out at home. You're going to be able to check in on it throughout the day periodically. You don't want to put it on and be
Right.
like, I'll be back at 6.
'Cause-
No problem. I would not recommend that.
Right.
Because there's
Yeah.
almost that literal like melting point of ice or something where like, you know, it's frozen, and then it just starts to de-thaw, and then
Yeah, so once it all melts, you're looking at about 62 degrees Celsius.
Right.
Sorry, I'm not really up with Fahrenheit. 62 degrees Celsius. And you're wanting to keep it kind of under 80.
under it.
And so
it burns after.
You're going to start getting darkening in your wax, which doesn't make for really nice
Okay.
looking candles. So we're going to turn it on. You're going to let that whole satchel of wax melt.
Yes.
Then what you're going to be left with when you pull that cheesecloth bag out of your crock pot is all of kind of the grime. So it's acting as a bit of a strainer. So you're going to pull that out. You're going to kind of push all the liquid out of it with a pair of tongs or something. It's going to be quite hot. So
Okay.
Yeah.
be careful when you're doing this that you're not burning yourself. You're going to throw that out, or you're going to keep that and make fire starters. So we can talk about that a little bit later. It's
Make fire starters.
yeah, so
Okay.
they're great
Yeah, I
for
wanna know about that.
camping. We can talk about that for sure. Like I said, it's nice to not be wasting any of these products. So along every stage of this
Right.
process, to be able to even use the bag that
Yes.
we're cleaning our wax in. So we're going to remove that. Let's say we're going to set it aside for those fabulous fire starters. And then you are going to turn your crock pot off, and you're going to let the whole thing cool.
Okay.
So what happens is once your beeswax has re-solidified, you're going to pop that little puck out of your crock pot. All of the water is going to be underneath, and the wax is going to be on top. So
Because
you
wax is lighter
than water.
water.
So it will float up
floats
to the top. And a lot of the grime, the honey is going to dissolve in the water, and
Okay.
that's going to be down
Below it.
at the bottom. So you're going to pull that little puck out. You can dry it off. If it's not really hard, you're going to get grime on the bottom where the water is. You can scrape that off, or you can set that aside, let it dry or dry it off, remove the water, and then you're going to melt it and put it through a strainer again.
Okay.
And when
okay.
you're melting it, you want to make sure that, I always like to make sure that it's dry, first of all, and then that you're double boiling it. So I really like to use glass Pyrex measuring cups if you're doing a really small amount. You put the wax in there. You can use a pot you get at the secondhand store. Put that in a bigger pot of water, double boil it that way, and then you are going to pour that through a very fine strainer. I always say the biggest thing with doing this at home is that you're not using your good kitchen stuff.
Okay.
So you're not, the pan that you're using to
because
cook your
it's like
dinner
a
in all the
one-use
time,
deal.
it often is very hard to clean.
Okay.
So I get a Rubbermaid, and I, grab a coffee with my sister, and we go thrift stores shopping, and we get those good,
Okay.
$2 pots. I don't like
so
the
if I
dollar
want
store
to do
ones.
this, if I'm thinking
Yeah.
about doing this, when is your sister available?
Oh, she's pretty available.
Is she?
Yeah, she's a farmer.
Oh,
she
nice.
likes to get out.
So she's willing to go to town, have coffee, and go to the thrift
She is,
stores and look for
especially
these.
if you're buying. Yeah.
Okay. All
You're
right.
buying the coffee,
Okay.
she's in.
Shout out to Jess's sister. Okay.
Yeah, she's
All
a
right.
good thrift store shopper.
All
So
right. I like one of the things you just mentioned just a few minutes ago, and that was that you want to be careful to use everything. Everything's reusable with wax, isn't
Yes.
it? And I think, well, I know that that's the real reason that I wanted to bring in the fact that these little tiny flakes of wax that the bees have to generate, where it takes 1 million plus flakes of wax to make 1 single kilo, like 2 pounds or so
Yeah.
of beeswax. Every one of those flakes represents some effort on the part of a little bee. So when you're collecting these burr combs and these bridge combs out of your hive and you are uncapping your honey, you don't just kind of leave that somewhere, throw it away. You will collect that stuff,
Yes.
save it, and understand that the bees went through a lot of effort to produce that. And we do take care of the bees. We do feed them. We do try to get them to go through winter. We help them fight diseases and pests. So I feel like it's something of a mutual agreement between humans and bees that we should take care of them. And in return, they're giving us some of their excess products that they don't necessarily need.
yeah, it's a
Yeah.
bit of payment for care, maybe.
Payment for care is a nice way to say that. So we've got that. We've got the beeswax. We're being thrifty, as beekeepers usually have to be anyway.
Yeah.
And we're producing different types of products from this wax. So before we get up from where we're seated and start looking at how to do this physically, and you talking, demonstrating, and showing us all these things, I just want to make sure that we're clear with the whole process. And it requires a lot of heat along the way, but you did mention that beeswax can be explosive. It can
definitely catch fire. It is flammable, which is what, partially, that's what makes it a good product for candles.
Right.
Right? And so you want to be careful that when you're heating beeswax, you don't want to be using direct heat. So you're not going to put beeswax in a pot and put that directly on the stove. You're going to want to use, you can get things like small water jacketed mini
Okay.
melters, which is like a little pot and it has a water jacket. You fill
Okay.
that up. They're about $45. You put the water in the jacket and you can put that right on your stove.
Okay.
Or you can do something like 2 pots where you're getting that water just to keep the heat, direct heat off your beeswax. So that's a
Right.
really important thing to remember when we are processing wax.
Okay, so my wife and my daughter sometimes make candles.
Yes.
And they use the microwave to melt the wax.
You can,
Is there a
yes.
risk to that, or is there any cautionary advice that you want to give us on that?
I would say there's the same risk that you're going to have heating wax anywhere. You're wanting to, like having wax on the stove, having wax in the microwave, you're going to want to put it in for short periods of time.
Okay.
And then be checking on it. So
Okay.
you don't think, oh, it'll take maybe 10 minutes and put it
Ooh.
on and walk away.
Yeah.
You want to say, okay, I'm going to put it on for 1 minute.
Right.
And then I'm going to see how melted is it. Give it 30 seconds, give it 1 minute, give it 2
Okay,
minutes.
okay.
It does depend on the microwave, of course, but check it often and don't
Okay.
leave it unattended.
But there's no inherent problems that you know
No.
of that you'd
A
say.
lot of people do it that
Okay,
way. For
okay.
reheating, cleaned, ready to use
Right.
beeswax.
This is what they're using. Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
To render it, by the way, what we do, and this is more my part than theirs, is I purchased a really nice solar wax melter. Our
Yes.
deck faces the south.
Okay.
And just in a few days every year, like 2 or 3 days literally, we can melt down all the wax that we would produce from our couple of backyard hives, and it comes out beautifully white and clean. And then from that point on, it's very similar to what you've described, because our wax melts into little plastic tubs to collect it,
Yeah.
still inside of the melter. And then in the evening, when it starts to cool off, we take those little boxes, those little
Yeah, like
storage
trays,
containers, those
kind
little
of, yeah.
trays, bring them in the house and then wash it because it's usually sticky with honey.
Right. Yes.
And then once it's washed and maybe scrape off a little bit of the slum gum off the bottom, then we have this beautiful beeswax. And then
Yeah.
it goes into the microwave, at least in our family.
Yeah, so wax melters, solar wax melters are a really great way in the summer to get that wax melted and cleaned up. I know a number of people who keep them out at their apiaries as they are scraping cappings. They're throwing them straight in their wax melters.
Great idea.
It definitely is a really good way to do it in the summer. If you have a lot of capping wax from uncapping, it gets a little bit trickier to do that method. And, I find that I'm quite busy in the summer, and I really just put this off to be a winter project. And
Okay.
so it's turned into an indoor project, and I've definitely been working on ways to make it as least messy as possible.
Right.
I spent a lot of years doing this in my kitchen. My husband loved it. He enjoyed the door handles being sticky and the floor.
Yeah, that's
and,
enjoyable.
scraping wax from every place you could imagine in
Yeah.
the house. And so he made me a special wax room. Now he's contained the stickiness, and I have a very special space where I leave all of these things set up.
Oh.
So if you get your kitchen sticky for long enough, your husband will come through and or wife,
Yeah.
and you'll
You're-
get a great space.
I'm guessing moms won't do that. Or no, that was a bad joke.
Won't do what?
No, I do the candle making at my parents' house.
Oh, well, maybe.
They don't.
Moms don't like a mess either, but since it was my mess, it's okay. If my kids make candles in the kitchen, my goodness.
Bidzina has a saying that he told me a few weeks ago, and that is something from his mother that, how did that go? It takes one person to go ahead with it.
Yeah, one person can make a mess, and 10 can be cleaning up after them, and it still won't be enough.
And it still won't be enough. Now, you add in a bit of beeswax and honey, and
never enough.
It's never enough.
Yeah.
Okay, I think we've kind of gone through a little bit. The only thing we didn't really get a good chat about here is Jessie Smolders herself. Like, where do you come from?
Well, I come from here.
Here?
From
Here.
Alberta.
Okay.
Born and raised in Alberta. I grew up in Black Diamond. It's Diamond Valley now. But anybody who grew up there still calls it Black Diamond, and probably always will.
Yes.
I've been beekeeping for around 12 years. And I got into it because of my mom, actually. She one day said to me, we should take a beekeeping class and we should beekeep together. I think she just wanted, I had moved out quite a few years before that, quite a few, a few, let's just put it that way. And I think she was just looking for some way for us to kind of connect. So she said, let's get some bees in my backyard. They run this beautiful permaculture space. I always grew up with a real appreciation for the use of beeswax in things like salves and balms, and we made candles for as long as I can remember. When I was probably too small to be playing with hot wax, we were making candles.
You're never too small to play with hot wax.
And
Just make sure people know that.
She said to me, let's go to a beekeeping class. And so we did.
Yeah.
And it was amazing. I was absolutely hooked. We bought a nuke from Bill Stagg, and I just never looked back since. She does not beekeep anymore.
Yeah.
We did it together, I think, for 2 or 3 years, and it was a really lovely experience. We would go check the bees, and then we would celebrate everything because we knew nothing about bees. And so every time we would do an inspection, we'd go out there and it's like, this is amazing. These bees, look at what they're doing and look how far they're coming. And those were some really good beekeeping foundation for me. And so I just embraced that. And I've been working in the beekeeping industry for a number of years. I want to say 9 or even 10.
Wow.
And
Did you guys make candles together?
well, even when I was a kid, yeah, I grew up making candles.
I see.
Not
Even
with-
before beekeeping.
That was when we would buy beeswax, and
Wow,
I
I
grew
see.
up in that sort of culture. We did a lot of home remedies, a lot of salves and balms and
So you're
things
just
like that.
right around the corner for you guys.
It was definitely in line with the things that we grew up, our values that we grew up with. And yeah, ever since I've just been full steam
Your mother sounds like a
beekeeping.
super cool person.
She's pretty fabulous,
Yeah,
yeah.
sounds
And
great.
so I'm just immersed in it. I have my own little bee business called Green Box Bees, and I sell honey, and I make candles, and I make salves, and yeah,
We're gonna
my
look
kids make
at-
beeswax crayons. And
Do you have a website?
It's
and
really
and a-
fabulous. Yeah, I do. It's greenboxbees.com.
Okay. And
Greenboxbees.com. So I'm going to
Yeah.
stick that on the podcast so
Yeah.
that people who are listening, if they want to poke around, they
For
can go
sure.
and visit you there.
See
I'll
what
put
I'm
some
up to.
pictures up on the screen here. And your
Yeah.
social medias, would you like to
Yeah,
share?
it's Greenbox Bees. I'm on Facebook and Instagram.
Just, Green Box Bees.
Yeah.
Just,
Yeah,
just the one.
exactly that.
Okay.
All one word. I don't know.
That's-
Is that how that works?
And it's
That
spelled.
works.
It's spelled the same way.
There's nothing weird about it. It is like as simple as it possibly can be.
Okay.
Okay, Green Box Bees. We're going to certainly remember that. And since you started to tell us that you're making salves and candles and lots of things like that, why don't we go ahead and actually
Let's.
have you demonstrate and tell us how you do some of these
Yeah,
so we can
let's
get
talk
the
about it.
tricks from the expert.
Yeah. Do we want to talk about candles first, or what are we?
We could I wanted to, in the end, we can come sit back down and kind of talk a little more.
Okay.
Sounds really
Do
good.
we want to move over to the candle area, and then we
Yes.
can talk about
Yes.
what it takes to make a good candle?
I think
Yeah.
that's a great idea.
Yeah, let's do that.
So we'll-
Okay.
I love it.
We'll do a little reshuffle here, and we'll be back in a couple minutes.
Awesome.
Well, for the listeners and viewers, it'll be almost immediate.
It would be, yeah.
Okay.
With Hollywood editing.
Okay, and we're back again. We're recording from Worker and Hive in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. We're visiting with Jessie Smulders. Is it
Yeah.
Smolder singular or Smulders?
With an S.
With an
Smulders.
S, so,
Yeah.
so it's plural.
It is.
You have
yeah.
a plural name. Okay. So, Jess, we're just kind of staging here, getting things set up to show, you're going to show us a little bit about how you make everything from the beeswax paper for taking
For
care
the
of
cloth,
foods,
yeah.
and also how you take care of the beeswax itself.
Yeah, so I would like to talk about candles first, if that is something that works.
No.
I'd like to, no, we want to talk about something else first. I'd like to just talk a little bit about what makes a good beeswax candle. So it's not as easy as just getting a mold and throwing a wick in and pouring your wax. It feels like it should be that easy, but there are definitely some components that you need to consider to make a really good burning candle.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what are those?
Well, we're going to talk about those. Ron, did you have a question there? You were...
Yeah, no, I'm
You
just
were leading
just a
into
bit-
something, it felt like.
I was, because I thought it was as easy as just getting a mold, sticking a wick in, and dumping the wax in there, and there you go. But
Well, here's some shameless promoting for you.
Okay.
If you buy a candle mold at Worker and Hive, it tells you what wick to use, and it is just that easy.
okay.
So there's a little shameless promotion. But if you're using something like a container, something like this, we have a dish here. It's a ceramic dish. If you're pouring into something, you're going to have to choose a wick to use with that container, let's say. And the size of the wick really does matter. When they say size doesn't matter, it's not true.
I think it's
In
better
wick?
if I'm over here.
Yeah, I think that's
It's
great.
kind of easier for you.
Okay.
So with wicks,
I'm glad we worked right over that bit about size doesn't matter. It does
so with
matter.
wicks,
Size
it
matters.
Yeah. So
with wicks.
With wicks. Okay.
With wicks, yeah. So if you are making a candle and you have a wick that is oversized, you are going to get, like, your burn pool is going to grow too quickly, and you're going to get a candle that drips.
I have been told so often that my wick is oversized.
Have you? We should work on that and get you a right-sized wick.
I guess so, because it does burn too fast.
And yeah.
Where were we?
You're also going to get a lot of sputtering. So you'll get this large flame
Yes.
that does a lot of sputtering. So don't.
Seen that too. Okay.
You need a lot of wax if you've got a large-sized wick.
Yes.
And so if you have a wick that is too small, you're going to have the opposite happen. So beeswax is a very...
Say it again. If the wick is too small in the candle, what
Yeah.
happens?
You are going to... It'll either burn out, where your wick is not going to burn long enough before it kind of just sputters out. So you'll get this small burn pool,
Right.
and then you'll get a candle that does tunnel down. And so
Okay.
it's not going to burn to the edges. If you have a nice pillar, I think there's one here by Bidzina. If you have a wick that's undersized, what's going to happen is you'll get this little burn pool kind of like this, and then it'll burn down, and you'll get all this outside area that isn't burnt. So you're not going to have a candle that you'll get your full burning length with.
So-
and it won't look as nice.
So what you're holding right now is probably about 2 centimeters in diameter, and the wick looks really small to my eye. So this is an example of what not to do?
No, this is a wick. This is the wick you would want to use.
Oh, that wick is big
so
enough?
So if we were burning this candle, it would burn perfect.
Oh, okay.
Obviously. No.
Okay.
I have tested these. I would say my biggest advice to people making candles, especially people who are wanting to sell candles, is to make your candles and burn them. You make one and you test burn it. If it's not right, you just toss this whole candle right back in the pot. And so that's kind of the joy of candle making is, if you make, let's say you're making cards, and you make a card and it doesn't quite turn out, that paper's kind of ruined. You can't just toss it back in and make it again.
Right.
The joy with candles is I would take this candle, if I'd not made this candle a few hundred times, I would take this candle and I would burn it. I would burn it for a minimum of 2 hours at a time, and I would then blow it out and I'd do it again. And if I don't like the way it burns, I'll take this whole candle and I'll just throw it right back in my pot.
and melt it down again, and then do it again with a
And then
different size wick on it.
Yeah.
This is great. I don't think I know of, well, maybe knitting and crocheting, you can always tear apart what you've been working on and reuse the yarn, but I don't know if, like, you can't do that with a cooked meal or very many other things. This is really something.
Yeah.
To have a hobby that when you don't, or if you have a mold that you're trying to do and you don't quite like the looks of it.
Or you take your candle out of the mold too soon. That happens quite often.
Okay.
And you've damaged it. Maybe you've made these and you had a whole bunch in a box and you drop it and they get dinged. You always have a second chance
Right,
with beeswax, which is what I love. You can really be creative, and if it doesn't work, you just do it again. Okay. And I always say that in my class, like, don't be scared to try it. Don't be scared to explore new things, because you always get the chance just to try again.
Okay.
Now, when you're looking at it, it's about 1/4 of an inch sticking out of the candle?
Yeah.
Or is there an exact size, or did you more?
No, you want it to be about 1/4 of an inch.
Okay.
If you have it too tall, it will flop over. And then whichever side that wick kind of flops over to is going to burn more, and that's where you're going to get some dripping. So every time before I light my candles for a second or third, and once I've lit them already once before, I'm going to trim down that wick again, and then it's going to burn a lot straighter. Yeah, you can make all kinds of fun things with candles. Ron's holding here just a little duck candle.
I love the duck.
They are
It's
very, very
really,
cute, but
really nice. Yes.
they're definitely not going to get the best burn. So you can see that wick is through the duck's head.
Yeah.
You get a lot of the back end of that duck left behind.
Now,
left behind. We're just full of surprises today.
Yeah.
Yes. I love it. I love it. So does this float?
I don't know. I've never tried, but wouldn't that be cute?
Yes.
so when you have a shape like this, for the audio listeners, it's pretty much an L.
It's
imagine.
a duck.
Yeah,
Yeah.
duck. Yeah, and then you want the wick to, it has to go down, and then it's gonna go sideways.
It's not, though. It's going to go straight down.
It's gonna go straight down.
Yeah.
Is it possible to make it go sideways?
Not really.
Not really.
Because once you change from an up and down position, it's going to just drown if you were going horizontally. It
Right.
wouldn't
Like-
still burn. So
Without having to put something in the wax to hold it in place.
you'd have to. I don't know of any case you can burn it horizontally because it would just drown in its own pool, essentially. And so really,
but then you can
with-
always throw it back in the tub and try again.
yeah, you just take the back of that duck and you make it into a new duck.
Oh boy.
So I think that those different shaped candles. So Bidzina has a duck there. We have a lot of different shaped molds. We have some little angels. We have some little honey bears.
I bought an angel
Oh
here.
yes, how did it turn out?
It's not going to be used.
Why?
Oh, my wife looked at it and she thought it looked kind of creepy.
I love that candle.
Oh, I thought it would be a nice one too, but she's looking
Did
at it.
she
and
make
she's-
it even once?
No.
I'm sending you home with one. Made.
Oh,
Because then she can see it's very cute.
that would be great. That would be
Because
great.
sometimes you look at pictures on these molds and
Yes.
they maybe don't always do the mold
Okay.
justice.
Okay.
I didn't buy that mold for many years.
Because you were scared of it too.
I was.
Yes.
But I had a customer call me and say, I'm having such a hard time with this mold. I keep breaking its wings off the angel. How do I get it out?
You
And
ring a bell because every
I
time
thought,
you
my
ring a
goodness,
bell.
I don't really know because I've never made that candle. So I promptly bought it and said, I'll let you know later. And I made it just so I could figure out the best way to remove the wings.
Okay.
And it was beautiful. So I'm going to send you home with one. I have one made here.
Sounds
and
great.
maybe it'll be a hit.
Okay, so I also bought the one of Ziertzen, the beekeeper, and one of the Christmas
Cupid.
tree, and so I'm just asking if I could have one of each of those
Oh, I
completely
don't
made.
know if I have those other
no,
ones,
I'm just
Ron.
kidding, just kidding.
But for you, anything.
Just kidding. Just that one would be great. So
Oh,
the
yeah,
Cupid,
we'll show
I
her.
think it is. It's a. I want to say a stupid angel, but it might be a Cupid angel.
I think it is.
Is it?
I think
Yeah.
we had this conversation when you came in about it being
I know.
Cupid. Yeah.
But, I
So-
mean, you had such a selection. I think Worker and Hive must have about 40 different styles.
We have a lot, and
Yes.
we are getting a lot more
Ooh.
on our next candle order. So
Okay.
I'm really excited. They're coming out with some new molds,
Yes.
and it's going to be amazing.
Since we're on to molds now,
Yeah.
I see you have a lot of molds just out of sight. So
Yes.
if you
I have-
don't mind bringing in a few that you can
Yeah.
tell us how they work and maybe a couple of the bigger ones like those. Yes. So
Okay.
Jess is getting us some.
So I have 1 second here. Okay, so I have a few different molds. These are a silicone mold. So what I have here is a white silicone mold. They are my most favorite molds to work with because they're really easy to get your candles out of.
Okay.
You can get pretty intricate designs with the silicone molds. And these molds, you're not needing to use a mold release. Okay, which makes it a little bit easier. They all have slits in the side of them, and those are used to get the wick in and also to get the candle to be able to remove it easily.
That's factory, or did you do that?
No, this comes from Lyson this way.
Oh.
It's a really great design. You are going to have to use elastics to keep it shut when you're pouring your candle, but we will go through that.
Okay.
I love the silicone molds. I would say probably 95% of the molds I use are silicone. The other option are metal molds. Okay. A metal mold is, whenever you use a metal or a hard plastic mold, you do need to use a release. So you can get like a mold release. We have this one here. It's from Poland, so there's no English on it, but trust me, it says mold release. And you want to spray your mold quite well so that the candle will come out when it cools.
So you spray it before you pour.
You do, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, do we really need this material that's from Poland that comes in a can that you spray, or can you get like a oil or?
Yeah, so you need some kind of release. They do sell, some places sell a powdered mold release. I don't personally like that one.
Okay.
I find it not really great. You can also use PAM or any kind of cooking spray.
Right.
So the thing with PAM is it will, when you spray it on, it kind of leaves a little, like a film a little bit. So you will have to take a soft cotton cloth and you will have to wipe down your candle when you remove it. With a silicone spray, you don't get that same kind of film.
I see.
And so there are advantages for sure to using a silicone spray, but a PAM or a whatever kind of spray, kitchen spray you have will get your candle out
Okay.
for sure.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let's go into that get your candle out bit just a little bit more. So let's assume that we have the metal one and
Yeah.
we do need the release.
Yeah.
And since I know nothing about making candles, when you first used the word release, I was thinking something very mechanical. But the word release is referring more to the chemical that makes it easier to slide out the cold.
Yeah, so what
wax.
happens when you're pouring into a hard mold, so hard plastic or metal, is that beeswax is going to shrink a lot when it cools.
Right, okay.
So when you're pouring into any kind of container, whether it be a container candle or a hard mold, if you're not using a silicone or a candle release, like a mold release or a spray of some kind, your wax is going to stick to the mold, and then as it shrinks, it's going to separate from itself. So often you'll get these cracks in the middle of your candle, and it will be stuck to the outside. You will never get that out unless you remelt it.
Wow, okay.
So
Makes
then
sense.
you'll get these candles that are stuck in your molds with this big crack down the middle. Or if you're pouring into maybe some jars, jar candles are really popular right now, you're going to get candles that potentially will crack in the middle because they'll stick to the outside of your container, or to the inside of your container, I should say, and then they'll separate from themselves as they cool. So you'll get this big crack in the center.
Which is not a big problem because you just throw it back into the bowl and you melt it down again.
Well,
and
it's a little trickier in a container, right? Because it made a mess of your container.
It
So,
would have. So-
definitely you want to use a mold release.
And when you reuse one of these metal type candle molds,
Yeah.
does it have to be cleaned out with like a knife, or like to get every
No,
little
so
bit of?
once you spray it, like you'll be able to see here
Yes, I'm looking into
that it's very
this-
clean.
this small. It has
This is called a wick pin.
that's a wick pin.
So you put the wick after it dries.
Yeah, so this is a votive. What we're talking about here is a votive mold. They come as a small metal cup.
It looks like a thimble for a giant's thumb.
It does, yeah. Or like a little shot glass or something.
Oh, I can get into
So
that. Okay.
you would buy the metal cup. It's
Yes.
a tea light mold. And I personally love to use these. It's just like looks like a little stand.
Right.
It has a flat bottom that fits perfectly in the bottom of your votive cup with a little kind of spike essentially
spike.
sticking out of it.
Right.
Looks like a coat hanger.
Kind of like
Mini, yeah.
or some kind of stand. So you're going to put that in your votive cup,
That gets sprayed also.
and you're going to spray the whole thing.
Yep.
And the reason we use a wick pin is what that's called, is because then your wick is going to be centered every time. So this is in the center of that mold. You're going to pour your wax in here, and then you're going to pop that candle off of its wick pin and slide in a pre-assembled votive wick. And so then every time you're not having to try and center your wick, that wick pin is going to do it for you. So we do have kits that have all of the stuff you need to make votives, but those wick pins, I did it for a few years without, and I would never go back now, because you're going to get that perfectly centered wick every time. So wick pins are really fabulous.
Yes.
Speaking of wicks, you could use different variety. It's here you've went with the traditional one. Is this your preference, or do you like any other ones?
Yeah, so it's hard to say it would be a traditional wick. I'm not entirely sure what a traditional wick would be, really.
Kind of like the white string, like the one that you think.
Yeah, like a cotton wick.
Yeah, cotton wick.
Yeah, so there's just an unlimited amount of wicks. And there's a lot of confusion around what wick do I use. So here we sell wicks that come from Europe. And so the sizing is European sizing. It's what I'm most familiar with. It's the wicks that I use because I have pretty good access to them. And so the way that they are sized is they come, they're sold in a 3 by something number. Okay, so for example, you would buy a 3 by 10 wick. And so that is a flat braided wick. It has 3 groups of strands. So that's the 3 times 10. And 10 is the number of strands that you're going to have per group of strands. So 3 times 10 would be 3 groups of 10 strands, flat braided. So this one that you're looking at, Ron, is actually a round braided wick, which is different. So the duck and the tree, or the tree is a round braided wick as well. The tree, or the duck, see how that's a flat wick?
Yes, I do see that it's flat.
Yeah, and that's going to be a 3 by 8. So 3 groups of 8 strands. And then it goes up 3 by 10, 3 by 16, 3 by 11, 3 by 18.
So all the original strands are probably the same size. So as you go from 8 to 10 to 16, you're getting a thicker and thicker wick in the end.
So a 16 will be double the size of 8.
And would you then want to use that on a candle mold that's much, much bigger?
Yeah, so like a 316, you're going to look at about a 2.5 inch diameter of candle. This candle that you
2.5 inch diameter
that you were looking at here, this taper, that wick is a round braided wick. The way you measure it is in millimeters. So that is a 2 millimeter wick. Then you can get a 3 millimeter wick, a 1.5 millimeter wick, and then you can go to North American size wicks, which are a 2-0, a 4-0, a 60 ply wick. You can get zinc cord wicks, you can get cardboard cord wicks, you can get cotton cord wicks, you can get pretty much anything. You can use wood wicks. So when you think about what wick should I use in a candle, it can be pretty overwhelming because there's just so many options out there.
So cool.
I've made some candles, just dabbled with it a little bit, and I've experimented with a bunch of different wicks. Well, just the cotton, wood, and then hemp.
Okay.
And the hemp is the one that I really liked. It was these, so all the places you could get it at, I don't know. It's the cannabis shop, a cannabis store. They sell little hemp wicks for cannabis use, but the wick can be used just for candles, and it's pre-dipped in wax. The wick itself.
Yeah.
Oh.
And so the combination of the wick being dipped in wax, and I guess that's what's happening to this, but it burns really, really nicely.
Yeah, so it's a primed wick.
Yeah, primed.
I do really encourage people to prime their wicks. I find they do burn a little bit better, and you get less chance of air bubbles in your candle.
So how do you prime a wick?
You're just taking your wick. I actually have some here. That has to heat up a little bit more. I had it off there for a minute. But you're taking your wick. I have one cut. And you just hold the end of it to make sure you have enough wick that you're not going to dip your fingers in wax.
Yes.
And you're just dipping it in the beeswax till it's covered.
when you put that wick in the beeswax, you're going to get all kinds of air bubbles coming out of your wick. Once the
Really?
air bubbles stop, I take that wick out and I lay it down in my little wax room. I have just
That your
piece of-
husband made for you
Yeah,
because
isn't
he
he
was tired of
fabulous?
the doorknob being sticky.
We'll say it's because he wants to support my dream, but I think
Yeah.
it's because of the kitchen.
Yeah, I know.
I have just like a piece of cardboard. I lay it on that cardboard
Mm-hmm.
and let it cool.
Okay, would
Yeah.
you come along and cut off the part that you were holding that did
No.
not get no?
No, because once you put that into, I'm just going to show you here.
Okay.
Once you put that into a mold,
So
you're
Jess
going
is,
to get
Jess
it
is holding
hanging
a
out.
small mold, and it's one of the silicone ones that has a crack or split down the side of it, and the wick is centered in the bottom, and it sticks out the top. Although
Yeah.
is-
So
is-
what you need to remember, Ron,
Mm-hmm.
with this kind of mold is that on these silicone molds, the bottom,
is the top?
the top of the mold is the bottom of your candle.
No.
So often when people take these out, they'll cut the top wick off.
Oops.
More on a pillar because it's
And then
straight.
it's back in the
And then
pot
it's-
again.
Oh man, yeah, you get those you love those second tries.
Yeah.
But when you look at this and you see the wick hanging out of the top and the bottom,
Mm-hmm.
that part you were holding on to, you're going to have at the top of your candle.
Which becomes
Because
the bottom,
You're going to cut
which
that
gets
off
trimmed off.
after.
And that's what Matthew 25 talks about with the women. I think there were 10, let's see, how does that go? The 10 virgins trimmed their wicks, waiting for the perfect husband to arrive, and only 5 of them succeed. Do
Oh.
you remember that verse?
I know.
How about you, Bidzina? You have an uncle that's a priest.
Yeah, I know, but maybe in Georgian if I
Yeah, you would know it in Georgian. You can tell us that. You've never spoken Georgian on the air before. Okay, so trimming the wick.
parents are a little-
That is
Yeah.
something from the Bible. I do remember that, and I think it is Matthew 25. But anyway, it's just one of those things that people have done for at least 2,000 years, because that was
Yeah.
written 2,000 years ago.
There you go.
And they did trim the wicks because that was the way of preparing. In those days, it would have been an oil burning lamp, but it
Yes,
had
or
to
like
be
a tallow
it
or
had-
an animal fat was what was used before
And if you
beeswax.
didn't do that perfectly, then the husband doesn't want you.
Oh.
And that's what the message
Well, it
was.
is
from-
important to have properly trimmed wicks.
Mm-hmm.
I got this beautiful new candle holder for Christmas, and it sits on our mantle, and it holds 6 beautiful extra wide tapers. And my husband likes to light those in the evening when he's down in the living room watching TV.
Oh.
And every day I say to him, Andrew, did you trim those before you lit them? And he looks at me and he says, of course I trimmed them, but he's never once trimmed them. Yeah, and I know.
How do you know? Like, how
I
do you
know because they drip.
Okay.
So when you don't trim them and
no,
the wicks
I'm
get too
guessing
long and
Andrew's-
flop over, they're going to start dripping.
Ah, I see. So
So-
that's the signal. So if
Yeah.
they're not dripping, then they've been properly trimmed.
Well, that's not always the case, because if you don't have the right wick, then there's another reason why they
Okay,
drip.
and if the
But,
wick is too narrow, too small for the size of the candle,
then they
that's-
will just tunnel.
Then they'll tunnel, and is
Yeah.
that when they drip the most, or
That's when they won't drip, because
Oh,
they're
'cause
they're not
they're
burning to
down
the
the
outsides.
center. I see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if you want to get the most burn time out of your candle, getting that proper sized wick is going to be what gets that for you.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Okay.
And a husband that trims the wicks.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also very
Which
good.
is very different from Matthew 25.
Yes.
Okay, so we're talking about molds, silicone molds, and I suppose there are other materials that these molds are sometimes made out of. But do you mind if we digress just a little bit?
Not at all.
Oh, good. I'm glad. 'cause
Yeah,
I love to
I
digress.
wanted to talk a little bit of a pseudoscience, if you guys don't mind, but no, we'll talk. I'll bring it up afterwards.
Okay.
It's-
Well, pseudoscience is fun, especially coming from you, the conspiracy expert. But Zina, what I wanted to ask about, and you're probably interested in this too, is we're talking about these silicone molds.
Okay.
And there are other ways of making candles. I've seen candles being made in snow. And I've also seen candles that are made by dipping into a big pot.
Yes.
So you're the expert. Can you tell us a little bit about these?
Yeah, so I probably wouldn't recommend making snow candles. Definitely you could. The one thing that you have to think about when making a snow candle is that the hot wax is going to melt the snow.
Well, of course.
Yeah, so ideally you would have something that was snow that maybe you took a jar, packed it out, and it was, fairly icy, and then pour it in. Because what's going to happen is you pour that wax in and it kind of goes all in through the snow. And you might get a pretty neat looking candle for sure.
Yes.
But you have to definitely want to have something a little abstract, which is a super fun thing for kids.
Oh, yeah.
Because they don't care about symmetrical, perfect looking
They
pillars.
want to see something fun.
They want to see something fun. So, yeah, keep your wax nice and cool when you're pouring it, probably under
Okay.
70 degrees.
Oh, yes.
And then that'd be a fun little project for kids. Into sand is also one way.
Yes.
You can kind of make a little makeshift mold. And then dipping is really fabulous.
Okay, tell us about dipping.
Yeah, so growing up, I went to the Waldorf school. I don't know if you're familiar with the Waldorf school at all.
Well, a lot of weird kids come out of the Waldorf schools, don't
I
they?
think maybe we're all a little weird, but that's okay.
No, I'm just joking. I do know, I even know Waldorf school teachers, and they are fabulous.
Yeah.
These are
so
great schools.
They really, we had this winter kind of festival every year, and they would do hand-dipped candles. And you would stand in this line, and you get your wick, which was like a long string, and you would go and you would dip, and then you'd walk along and you'd dip, and then you would have to hang it to cool a little bit, and then you go back around the circle, dip, dip, dip. So that's basically all you need is a wick and a pot of wax. It takes a lot of wax to dip candles
to make a pot.
because
It
you
has to be
need the
deep.
depth of whatever, depth of candle you want to have.
Right.
But I have a lot of fond candle dipping memories. And then we'd let those cool, and we'd get these colored sheets of wax from Germany, and you'd break little pieces of the color off, and you'd warm it up in your fingers, and you would attach it to your candles to make designs out of. And so
that's
we
nice.
did that for many years as kids, and that was always a really fun way to get kids involved. In some years past, I've done that with some school groups where you just get, to keep costs down, sometimes you'll just buy a big package of taper candles, and then you get that pliable beeswax color, and they decorate their candles.
That sounds like a fun project for kids. And
Yeah.
also, you can talk to them then about how the hexagon shape is there, and that the bees made
Appreciation
beeswax,
for the bees.
except for the taper, which is probably paraffin or something.
They often are, but it depends how pricey you want it to be. So
So going back to kind of some of the candles, so you have a green candle here.
yeah.
Yeah. So and this is very decorative. So how do you get that?
Yeah, so you can add pigment to wax. You can add scent to wax. I am kind of a traditionalist. I just really love the smell of pure beeswax.
Oh, yes.
I don't usually add anything to it, but you definitely can. The green tree, we have a little tree here that's green. We sell some pigment here. You can get it, all kinds of places. But we sell a pigment here. It's like a chip. And so you put these chips, they are a paraffin-based chip, though. You put them into your wax, and then you just melt your wax. And you have...
it all becomes stained with that color.
Yes. So Bidzina's over kind of on the other side of the table here, and I have some soup cans. Candle making really doesn't have to be equipment intensive process. Like, you don't need to spend a fortune to be making candles. So over by where Bidzina is, I have a little kind of electric roasting pan and a bunch of soup cans. I have one glass measuring cup, and I use those soup cans for colored wax. So I throw, a pound of beeswax in there, and I throw a color chip in there. I put it in a double boiler, so I'm melting it in water, and then when I'm done with it, I just let it harden in the tin. So it's a really cost-effective way. I don't want to spend $40 6 times to have, 6 pots with different colored wax in it. So you can really, if you're a little bit thrifty, you can really make candles in an inexpensive way.
Yeah, because if you use some of these ones, I mean, this is great, and you could probably get at the dollar store pretty cheap.
Yeah,
but then once it hardens, it's so hard to get it out.
Well, it is in the tin as well. You kind of, like on those ones, I'm just committing those containers. Yeah.
Yeah, but you can kind of mold it, or like you could slightly play with it a little bit if you were wanting to clean it out. But I guess, it's a soup can. Who cares?
Yeah, my daughter makes beeswax crayons, and she uses soup cans because she has 10 or 12 different shades of crayon. And so she has all the soup cans lined up, and that's what she uses because you just need so many containers. So I really like to do that.
I want to know about making these crayons. But
I feel like we need more time.
Well, no, we have all the time in the world. It's up to you how much time you have. But I do want to finish off the dipping of the candles just a little more. So I'm guessing that the temperature has to be a little bit lower when you're dipping than it would be if you were pouring it into a mold that has a lot of intricate edges and corners on it.
Yeah, so you're going to want it to be in between 65 and 70-ish degrees.
Okay. And before you were telling us it was around 70 to 75 when you're pouring it into a silicone mold.
Yeah. If you're doing some container candles, I like to let the wax cool a little bit and get it under 70 as well.
Oh, okay.
But for dipping, I do like to keep it a bit cooler because then as you dip, it's going to cool on the existing wax faster. So then you can dip sooner the second time.
Oh, yeah.
If you're dipping too close together, like you'll dip and not wait long enough for your next dip, you're going to start just melting the wax off of it instead of gaining.
Can you dip into cold water in between?
No.
No.
Because then you would want to dry them every time.
Oh.
Yeah. Because the water will just kind of get caught in there.
Yes.
And then your candle won't burn well.
Oh.
So you want to, you could do it outside. You could just take the whole afternoon and do it that way. It's kind of a nice way to make candles where you're just really not rushed. Make a pot of tea and get together with some like-minded candle enthusiasts.
Yeah, people
and just
who went to ward-off schools.
Yeah, for sure.
You're cool. It's nice, cool people. I like that.
Yeah.
Now that we're kind of talking about, lighting the final stages of a candle and when it's lit up, I've heard that
this is the pseudoscience part and the conspiracy theory part of our episode. We try to put one in every episode.
I try to do that.
Yeah, you try to do it.
But I've read actually again, and I'll put it up on the screen here, that so beeswax has special elements when burned. So when you're burning beeswax candles, what happens? It acts as a natural air filtration system.
Yes, it's an air purifier.
Yeah. So and what I've read is the positively charged ions that the candle releases when it's being burned gets attracted to the negative ions in the air, which are usually dust particles or stuff that you don't want in the air. So they connect, and normally those negative ions would be so light they'd just be floating around. Once they get attracted to the beeswax, they fall to the ground, and doing regular sweeping should purify your air if you also are lighting the candle regularly. Is this true, or?
I'm not really sure about the exact science of it, but definitely candles are known for their air purifying qualities. If I ever am painting, I always light candles to get rid of that paint smell. You're cooking bacon in the house, you light the candles after, and it really does help get those different like scent out of the air. But that is one of the big advantages to choosing beeswax as your product to make candles, as your
instead
base.
Of paraffin wax or
right.
So that's not
Yeah.
so conspiratorial. I think I would
You're
have to
expecting
agree with
different.
you. This doesn't sound like pseudoscience. I think there's and not only would it be purifying the air. Now I'm going to be the one stepping into the realm of pseudoscience just a little bit, because I'm going to suggest that having a lot of negative ions in the air makes a person generally tired and depressed. And one of the correlations we have that suggests this is that people who live in prairie provinces and also on the plains of the United States, I'm thinking like North Dakota, parts of Montana, down into all the way down to dusty areas, Saskatchewan and so on, the rates of depression and unfortunately even suicide are much higher in those areas, and they think it's correlated, not just correlated, but caused by the negative ions that are in the air so much. So by getting those out of the air, the dust that's carrying these negatively charged ions, getting them to be combined with the positive ions. Now, that's the part I don't know for sure. I'd have to study this a little bit, whether candles really do release positive ions. But if it does, then I would see that this not only cleans the air, but it makes a person feel better. And obviously you feel better when there's a candle burning anyway, because of the scent and
The
because you
warm
can
light.
look at it.
The
and
light, yes.
it's used in a lot of traditions for meditation.
Well, they say the light, the ambient light, the beeswax releases is very similar to sunlight. Kind of.
Okay.
When we're
Right.
or I don't know. I guess. moonlight
So
as well.
so it would probably be a little bit better if we had the candles burning in the evening instead of the old-fashioned light bulbs, for example.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So in the wintertime, kind of.
So we have more of a spectrum of light coming off of a candle than off of an old-fashioned
fluorescent.
bulb or
Yeah.
fluorescent lights. Yes. I like that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Now to, I guess, even
Oh, you're going
turn it up a notch.
turn it
Oh,
up
here
a
we go.
notch. Here we go.
Okay. So there is a scene in a movie called Wanted. It's a 2009 movie with Angelina Jolie, Morgan Freeman. There's a couple other characters, but those are two that I kind of remember.
So both Morgan Freeman and Angeli
Are both beekeepers.
Are both
Yeah.
beekeepers. And,
Oh, funny
yeah.
reference there.
Yeah.
Well, they're not beekeepers, but they are.
In the movie, they're not, but in real life, they are beekeepers.
Oh, yes, you're right.
Right. Yeah.
Morgan having about 80 colonies on his ranch in Mississippi, and Angelina having been on the cover of...
I don't know that she keeps bees, though,
But
does she?
she's willing to have them crawl
She-
all over her neck
Yeah.
and her face for photography.
She is a bit of a
So-
spokesperson for
she
bees. I'm
is.
not sure if she has them, though.
Okay,
But
we
to
don't
look
know that
into
she's a beekeeper,
but
but
there's a
bees
definite
keep
link.
her.
Yeah, there's definite link. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's actually
Okay,
yeah,
this
yeah.
movie, what's the name?
I actually
Wanted.
I didn't put
Wanted.
the connection together
Yeah.
until now, even though Ron has told me this quite a few times that Angelina Jolie and Morgan Freeman. Well, Morgan Freeman won, but not. Anyways, so going back to the movie, there's some spoiler alerts. So there are assassins. It's the movie's about assassins, and Angelina Jolie's an assassin, and I think Morgan Freeman's some sort of mentor, helping them with the assassin stuff. So when they get injured, these assassins, they take them to this spa area, and Angelina Jolie's is one of the assassins, and they're in the spa area, and to heal these wounds, they go into this tub of hot wax, and they let it solidify the entire body in wax, and once you've healed, then you get taken out of the tub.
Yeah. Yeah, they say that wax can help draw out toxins. In ancient Greece, they used wax for tonsillitis. They would cover your throat in wax to
Okay.
help pull out toxins.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, so really amazing stuff.
Does it work
Yeah.
though, or is it more just like people?
Well, does it work like modern medicine would work? Probably not. But I don't know. Did it work back then?
Does
Maybe.
modern medicine do
Maybe.
much for tonsillitis these days?
No, they just pull them out. So I don't know. Maybe beeswax could save a few.
So I've been hit by wax before, and it hurts, but it cools off really quick and it kind of just solidifies. And so let's say if you had a cut and wax were to get on it, would that be good? Would it be beneficial to cover it in wax and wait for it to cool?
Wax is definitely a sealant, right?
Yeah.
I think that's where things like salves and balms are coming in. Salves are generally more of a medicinal, they're made more medicinal, where you're making things like, let's say a propolis salve that would help with things like cuts. So you have the beeswax in there, which is a sealant essentially, and you're kind of protecting that area. And then you have your oil. You can do things like infused oil, like a propolis infused oil. Propolis is antibacterial, antiviral. And so then combining those things, as opposed to using a hot wax, you're using a wax-based product. And so in salves and balms, you do have quite a high percentage of wax, but in a pliable sort of consistency. And so those are really, really fabulous ways to use wax as a healer.
And again, I'm a real skeptic on a lot of these things, but I would agree with everything you've said, that there may be some salves or ointments or oils that you won't find as effective. But just to extend the whole story on bees just one step further, you can put honey on that cut or that sore.
Oh, right.
And it's extremely good for healing, especially burns.
Burns are unbelievable.
Unbelievable, with a dab of honey spread over top of the burn area, and with cuts. And then, of course, if you will go on and
yeah, no, exactly. So this is honestly kind of, I was already mind blown by beeswax, but now I'm even more mind blown because they make it themselves. Honey comes from flowers, the nectars. They kind of collect it. They don't really make honey.
Right.
Yeah.
They collect it.
Yeah. So, but beeswax, they make it.
That's correct.
Yeah, it's like...
It's even different than what the wasps do. The wasps don't generate or make paper. They collect bits of fibers and tree pieces, and they chew it and chew it and chew it. And insects, believe it or not, actually do have saliva in their mouths. So they mix that in and they turn it into paper.
Right.
But the bees, it's generated inside their body when they're eating.
Yeah.
And since we did mention, I want you to pursue a little bit more about the different kinds of things you can do with wax, as far as products beyond candles and so on. But I did read that back in the Neolithic days, this would be like the most recent Stone Age people, they would have lived about 10,000 to maybe only 3,000 or 4,000 years ago. People in those days used to treat cavities in their mouth.
Yes.
You know about this.
I do know about this, yeah. And it stopped, essentially it coats the nerve and stops pain, tooth pain. And it was fairly well documented that this is something that they used as essentially a cavity filling on decaying teeth. So they called them mini dentures or something.
Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, so it's pretty neat.
And that was beeswax.
And that's beeswax, yeah.
You wouldn't necessarily want to drench the cavity with honey.
Well, it wouldn't last very long, would it? Maybe you would, but...
It might even continue to eat away.
Yeah.
But the beeswax, and they found, I mean, it's a little gross, but they the archaeologists would have dug up graves and found people who, once they examined their bodies to see why they died and what illnesses they had, they started discovering beeswax inside of cavities.
Yeah.
For a number of these people. So we know it's true. We know that they actually did this.
Yeah.
I think that's brilliant.
Yeah.
It's so cool what people could do.
Yeah, so it does have some very good preserving qualities as well. So you look at, rounds of cheese that are dipped in. I don't know that they're using beeswax anymore, but that would be something that they would have used originally.
So is this the
Yeah.
cheesecloth that you were referring to earlier?
No, that's
or,
the
I mean,
cloth.
Sorry, the beeswax cloth.
It is, yeah. Do we want to talk any more about making candles? Do we want people just to come by the shop and have a chat with me about making candles?
They should take
come
your
to my
course
Make
if
It
they're in the
class.
area.
I have a Make It class on December. Oh my gosh, I'm a month behind. On February, I want to say February 1st. I have a Make It class here at the shop. So if people are curious about getting out, just trying some candle making, they can come. They can make as many candles as they want. So they pay by the weight of the candles, the weight of the wax. So they're just paying for wax. They can register on our website. It's a really good introduction to making candles.
That's the Worker and Hive website.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah, and so we don't talk about wax processing. That is purely just us, drinking tea or coffee, making candles. It's a fabulous evening to come with a friend. It was really a lot of fun. So I don't know if we want to maybe move on a little bit, talk about some beeswax food wraps.
I'd like that.
And I am at the store. I love to have people come by, take a peek at what we have, chat about candles. Maybe some people have been trying to make candles and as successfully as they'd like, or they want to try something new. I just love talking about candles. So I'm always
believe
around.
We're just above an hour.
'Kay.
So we usually keep it under 2 hours. So I don't know.
Okay.
We could go for another hour if you like.
Well, let's talk about the wax.
Let's talk about the wax wraps.
Yeah, so I do definitely want to touch on the wax wraps. Do we want to make one? Should I be plugging this in? It warms up
Let's
super
do it.
fast.
I think that'll be fun. Sure.
So let's make one here. Sorry, I'm just juggling here. Ron, I'm going to reach in here.
Maybe I'll come around. Hold the mic.
Okay, I think we're good actually for now. You're good there, Ron. Maybe you can make it. I didn't bring
maybe I can, maybe
I didn't
I can't.
bring my tools though, so don't burn yourself.
No, that's okay. You're older. I'm old.
Okay,
and it
I'm
doesn't
going to
matter
sneak around.
anymore.
I don't know if I'm too close here. Hopefully I'm not in your face too much. We're just going to do some adjusting. Okay, so beeswax food wrap. We did touch a little bit on this earlier. Ron's going to use my candles to make some wrap. So we did touch on this earlier. Beeswax food wrap is a coated cotton cloth. So a few things to keep in mind when you're going to be making a food wrap. You can make it with just plain beeswax. I don't find it to be as good. I really do like to use a recipe that has pine resin as well as jojoba oil. Okay, so I make it into these little bricks. There's a great recipe in a book called Beeswax Alchemy.
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 Okay.
Beeswax Alchemy.
So for people who don't know what alchemy is, that's where they used to try to turn lead into gold.
There you go.
So
Well, there's no lead into gold here.
Okay, but
just
there is some
beeswax
magic.
into food. There's some magic.
Okay.
Beeswax food wrap is magic.
Yeah.
So in the book Beeswax Alchemy, here's another shameless plug. We do sell it at the store.
Okay, you've reached your limit on free advertising.
Come on. I love that book. You don't have to buy it from us. You can buy it from anywhere. It is awesome. There's a recipe for this. It is beeswax, pine resin, and oil. So when you are making this, it takes forever to melt the pine resin. So my suggestion is I always do the full batch. It's a whole pound of beeswax. I do the whole batch on a day that I'm hanging around the house. I can give it a stir every now and then. And I pour it into little silicone molds, and it makes these nice little bricks. Okay, so it can be any kind of brick, any silicone mold that you have, or like a little. You can buy those tins that you make pre-made meals in, like at the dollar store. They're little like tinfoil tins.
Okay.
You can use those. You can really use anything, but I portion it out.
Mm-hmm.
And I portion it out so that I don't have to, every time I want to make a food wrap, make that whole concoction.
Right. So you've got
Yeah.
these things pre-prepared.
Yes.
How long does it take you to put all this stuff together then when
It takes
you do?
about 5 minutes to put all your ingredients together, and it takes a number of hours to melt it.
Oh, okay.
So you're going to want to use a double boiler. You mix it all together. You want that pine resin melted. You mix it up, and I portion it out. So today, for those of you who are just listening, we are using a electric pancake griddle, which is my favorite way to make beeswax food wraps. If you don't have an electric pancake griddle, you can use a cookie sheet with parchment paper. So we're going to talk about both those ways. First, we're going to talk about the pancake griddle because we have one in front of us. And then we're going to talk about the cookie sheet for those who don't have this.
And ultimately, what we're going to be doing here with this frying pan,
Yeah.
this pancake
Griddle.
and the wax is we want to make.
We're going to make a food wrap. So we have 100% cotton, which is important to get that 100% cotton cloth. Okay. You can, probably the most accessible place to get it for people who aren't, real fabric purchasers. I know Michael's has some. You can buy by the meter. So we're going to take this cotton cloth and we're going to take our pre-portioned block that now has hardened. So I put them all in a Ziploc bag. I'm going to pull one out and I'm going to just run it over the warm pancake griddle. So what I'm trying to do here is I am just melting a bunch of that mixture onto the pancake griddle. So this pancake griddle I have completely dedicated to making food wraps, which is easy when you just love making food wraps. So what we're going to do, we melt that. I have a little tool I usually use. I didn't bring it, which was silly, but we're going to just do it this way.
So Jess has preheated the pancake griddle and used her little chunk of wax, which is about the size of maybe twice the diameter of a person's thumb and just a little bit longer. So it's not a huge piece of wax. She spread that around, smeared it around on this somewhat warm griddle. The griddle temperature was somewhere close to something called, I can actually see some temperatures on here. So it's below 200 degrees. It's probably, you have the griddle set at...
it's at medium,
it says medium, which is above simmer and below 260. So I can't really tell you exactly the temperature that the griddle is at, but it's not very hot.
Yeah, this is definitely something, again, you're going to want to watch and not let it get too hot. So we are going to just melt that. And the goal here is to get your cloth completely saturated in this mixture. Okay? So if I had my little spreading tool, it'd be a bit easier today, but we're going to just use the brick to get it covered.
And you're doing a great job of that. The thing is almost totally saturated with a very light, very, very light film of wax on it right now.
Yeah, so we're going to send this piece home with Ron so he can also try it. All kinds of goodies today, Ron.
What about Bidzina? What does he get to take home?
He can take one home too.
Okay.
So we've just pulled that off of the griddle. It's completely saturated. So we're using a gray cloth. You can see it go from a light gray color to a dark gray color when it's covered in wax. So once it's completely saturated, we're pulling it off and you're just going to let it cool. So I'm going to set it aside. And we just let it cool. We are not going, if we don't have it saturated enough. So once it's cool, if you find there are sections that don't feel completely saturated, do it again. It's just like candles. You get a second chance. So if you get places that are way too saturated or it looks really, really thick, maybe you got too much on one, you're going to put it on the heat again. And I like to use like a spatula, and you kind of scrape some of that excess off. So like I said, I do have a class on this also coming up in the middle of February. Not a class, a make it night. So if you want to make some food wraps for yourself, come
when
hang out with me.
If people come to these classes to learn how to do some of these things, do they need to bring their own organic cotton?
You don't bring anything.
You don't bring anything.
You just bring your friends
Yes.
and yourself, and you take home, for the lip balm, beeswax food wrap, those are together. You take home a set of beeswax food wraps. You take home a batch of lip balm that you crafted yourself.
Hey.
So they're just super fun to try out new things. And really, I just want everybody to
How long
experience
does
the
class
joy
last?
of making stuff.
Is it in the evening? Is it on a Saturday or a Sunday?
Yeah, so we have, I want to say we have a weekday one in the evening. We have, I would have to check the times, but we have a daytime one and an evening one.
Okay.
Both coming up. And it is about 2.5 hours. Or these ones are about 2 hours.
Okay, that's a lot. You cover a lot of ground in a couple of hours.
Well, and a lot of it we go through how to make it. We talk about what we're making, and then people just get to create their own thing, be creative.
It sounds like fun.
And have a really fun evening. People don't have to stay 2 hours. We have the event is 2 hours. If they want to make 6 beeswax wraps and head out in an hour and 15 minutes, they can. I know with the candle make it, people just really loved making candles, and it was like, oh, but just one more. Can I make just one more candle? It's just really fun to create in someone else's space.
And when they want to stay
don't make your kitchen messy.
Yeah, and if they want to stay late to make candles, you don't have the option of shutting off the lights because they'll just light the candles and keep working.
I don't know. I am quite the candle maker, so it doesn't take much to convince me.
To convince you to stay. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, sure. One more. I'm always in.
So we have made one of these. I think it's cooled.
Yeah,
it's
feels
becoming
like
a bit
There's
stiff.
something.
Oh, yeah.
go.
But wow, it looks really cool. It feels waxy for some reason.
So in the class, do you also teach when you add the other stuff like pine resins and stuff?
We do talk about how to make the mixture. I will show how to make it, but we will not be using the mixture that we make, or I show people how to make in the class, because it just takes too long to melt, to be ready. So we're going to be using these pre-made blocks that I have here today.
Okay, now I'm smearing the wax around
I turned it off
on the griddle. It's still melting.
Yeah.
It looks great.
I should have brought more cloth.
No, maybe I've put too much wax down.
Well, I don't have any more cloth.
Oh, these aren't.
Those are already pre-made.
Yes, they feel waxy.
Yeah.
Okay, then I guess
We'll have to save that
I'm
wax
out of
for
luck.
later.
Maybe I could do my shirt.
Yeah. So wax is great waterproofing. You could do a tent.
I could do a tent.
You could do a tent. You could make your shirt into a rain jacket.
Oh, wow. That's
There you
great.
go.
So now, Bidzina, you put there it is. Now, if I were to fold this, well, these are folded over here.
Those are folded,
It
yeah.
doesn't crack then. I'm expecting like cold
Yeah.
wax
So
usually will
here,
crack
Bidzina,
all
can I
over the
give you
place.
this mic for 1 second? Okay.
All right.
I'm just sneaking in here. So I'm gonna grab. These are one of the pre-made ones we made in another class. So this one, you can see, you can scrunch it up, and it is very nice and pliable. So you see that it's not cracking.
No way.
So you're gonna put that over your dish like this.
Yes.
You do have to give it a little bit of warmth there to get it to stick. But then you stick that in your fridge, and it's going to keep your food nice and fresh.
Okay, so what Jess has done is she's taken a glass container with something in it and stuck this waxed cotton over top of it and just kind of molded it with her fingers into place.
Yeah.
So, and that will keep the bugs and germs out.
It will keep the germs out. The one thing, so if you were maybe wrapping a wrap with it, you'd stick your wrap in the middle and you would just wrap it up like a little taco here. Oops, I'll give you that again. trying to do it one-handed. So you'd wrap it up like this.
Oh, that's so cool.
I usually put a little elastic around it like that, and I send that with my kids to school for their lunches, so that we're not having any kind of lunch bag waste.
Yeah,
Oh,
you
that's
could
great.
reuse it.
Yeah, which is really, really beneficial.
Now, but Zena, you mentioned reusing it. So if you've had food inside of it and
Yes.
you want to reuse it, what do?
I wash it. So you can't wash it in hot water because that will
Melt the
wax.
Mm-hmm.
So you can use dish soap, like a Dawn dish soap, and you want to wash it with cold water.
Okay.
So you can put your dish soap on there, you rinse it off with cold water. If you're finding that they're getting, like the wax is seeming thin, you can just, a clean wrap, you're going to just re-wax it.
That's so cool.
And so you are, like with regular use, you're probably good about 6 months
Okay.
per wrap.
And worst come
Yeah.
to shove, if it does get really dirty, you could clean it with hot water and
And then
re-wax.
you're just going to re-wax
Yeah.
it. Yeah. Yeah. So
Yeah,
they're
it's good.
amazing. They do take
Yes,
a
it's
little bit
still
of an
clean.
adjustment to get used to using them as opposed to something that's disposable.
Right.
Like any kind of change in habit, it just takes time for it to
And now
be
you probably
something
don't-
that you're using.
You probably don't feel comfortable going back to Ziploc bags.
I don't even have any.
Wow.
So I have tried I make some little bags where I'm sewing them up into an actual snack bag. So a little button on there, and it's like a little pouch. You can do so many
Yeah.
things with these. Just another reason to get into beeswax.
That sounds so cool. I love it. I love it. This has been really informative, really interesting. We've covered most everything.
We have talked about a
A
lot
of things
yeah.
have been covered here. Everything from where beeswax comes from, how the beekeeper handles the wax, to the different things that you can make, including candles, dip candles, molded candles, and now these wraps, these beeswax food wraps.
No,
Yeah.
go ahead.
The one thing that I would like to hear just a little tiny bit more about
Yeah.
is like lip balm and that sort of thing. So what's involved in that?
Okay. Making lip balm is, again, easier than you think. You can make lip balm with very few ingredients. I do have a fabulous lip balm recipe I'm happy to share with people if they want to come see me. If they want to send me an email, I would be happy to pass it along. But
We'll put all this information in the description for you guys
Awesome.
to contact Jessie.
Yeah. Basically, you need a carrier oil. Okay. I often for my own use, I like to use a sweet almond oil.
Okay.
You can use a coconut oil. You can use a grapeseed oil. You can use a combination of different carrier oils. You can use infused oil if you want to get fancy. So a number of things. If we're talking really basic lip balm, you need your carrier oil. You need beeswax, a cocoa butter or shea butter. Okay, and then I like to also, you can put an essential oil in it. I often use like a peppermint. You can do lavender, orange, things like that. And that's a very basic lip balm. You are going to melt it down. You can put it in small tins. We have those small little lip balm tins. You can use something like that.
Right.
You can get at a lot of places. We have lip balm tubes here. You can get them from all over. Empty new lip balm tubes. You can pour it in there. And that's it.
So people-
I'd say 15 minutes,
Okay.
20 minutes, you can
And
have
that's
a really
it.
good batch of
And
lip
you're-
balm.
and
Yeah.
you're done. So I'm sure that people who are really interested are either going to come to your class if they're in the general South Alberta area. They could do that. They could go to Greenbox and contact you directly. But a lot of people are going to hop on the internet and look
Yeah.
for some formulas and so on. So we don't need to go into a great deal of detail about the exact percentages, but I'm just curious, how much beeswax, like is it half, is it a quarter, is it 1%, is it 80%? How much beeswax is in beeswax lip
In
balm?
lip balm. So you're looking at about a third
Okay,
of your lip balm is going to be beeswax.
Right.
So you'd have about 2 tablespoons beeswax, 2 tablespoons of your carrier oil,
Right.
and then the same of your cocoa butter.
Of the butter.
Or shea butter, or a combination of.
Yeah.
So when you're making lip balm, some people like it a little bit firmer, some people like it softer. The amount of wax versus oil that you use is going to determine how the consistency of your lip balm. So whether it comes out firmer lip balm or it comes out softer.
Right.
So if you want it softer, you're going to use a little bit less beeswax. If you're always keeping it in your pocket and it's going to be quite warm, you're going to want something with that little bit higher content of beeswax.
Good.
So a good rule of thumb is you're making that lip balm, you're going to take a spoon, give it a stir, take that spoon out and let it cool before you're pouring it into your lip balm tubes. That is going to show you, once it's cooled, the consistency of your lip balm. Because it's never awesome when you pour lip balm into all these little plastic tubes and then you go to use it the first time and it's just way too soft, that it's mushy all over, and it's a little bit disappointing. It's really hard to get out of the tubes. So get that spoon in there, put it in the fridge even for 5 minutes. Test out the consistency, and if it's the consistency you like, you're ready to pour it into your tubes.
That sounds great.
So that would be my biggest tip
Yes.
that I think often gets skipped.
Well, you've had a lot of
But it's
good
really good.
tips every step of the way here. We've learned a lot, and I'm sensing that we're only touching the surface of
We
what there
are,
is
yeah.
to know. So we really appreciate this. I don't know if we want to gather again and sit for another minute, or is this a good spot here for you, Bidzina?
I think we should probably finish up here. We've probably broken the record. There's 2 different clips, but I think we're like almost 2 hours. And there's also, like Ron just said, I wanted to talk about Michael Faraday. He did a bunch of beeswax candle experiments that are very fascinating.
So
But-
Michael Faraday, I just vaguely know that he was a scientist. Was it in England or was it in Holland or?
I
where-
want to say England.
in England.
Yeah.
And I associate him a little bit with chemistry, but also with some of his work on batteries. Is that right?
Yeah, so I think his most famous work is the Faraday cage.
Right, where
Uh,
you go in. So this is, you know how sometimes your cell phone will quit working as soon as the door closes on an elevator?
Okay.
You're inside of a Faraday cage. So
Okay.
it kind of cancels out, or it
So you know when tinfoil hats wear the tinfoil hat?
Yeah.
They're trying to create a Faraday cage
yes.
on top of
So
themselves.
you can't read what's inside their brain.
Oh.
So
So he's done some experiments on beeswax.
Probably
and,
150 years ago, would you say?
yeah, 1700.
Oh, okay.
1800
Yeah.
time period. Yeah. So, but beeswax candles. So he found them. You know, I'm a little rookie. I'm a little rough on the details, but essentially he just found it very fascinating, the phenomenon of a candle burning, and he would use it as a like lecture demonstration. So he would, and these students would keep coming over and over again just to listen to him lecture about this candle burning, and how and then he goes on about like some bee related stuff, but I have to get the details straight. So we should leave it for a second.
Maybe it's maybe it sounds like another time.
It does sound like an interesting
Second
thing
visit.
to follow up on. Maybe we can talk to like Faraday's great granddaughter who might know something about this in detail. So this
they
is
should, because
this is good. And anyway, we look at candles, we look at beeswax, and I think to me it's just one of the most amazing things in nature. And I'm not the only one, because we talked a little bit earlier about looking at the candle as it's burning, and that is a big part of a lot of traditions for meditating, Eastern religions, and within the various Catholic faiths, there, Roman Catholic, Eastern Orthodox, the candle was always, it had to be made out of beeswax
for its purities.
until about the time I was a little kid. And I remember hearing that the Pope had decided that as long as a candle used in a liturgy was 51% or more beeswax, it would be acceptable to the church.
Okay.
And until then, it had to be 100% beeswax, because people knew for a long time that these bees were innocent creatures, and they had the innocence of God, and they could create beeswax from their own body, and that made it especially pure. So you could use that in a church service. Now, when it became prohibitively expensive to be purchasing beeswax for these billions of candles that were burnt, every week around the world, then they began to allow paraffin, oil-based substitutes to be included. But I think it's really interesting that humans have had this love, this understanding, this connection with plain old beeswax going way.
It's not so plain though.
Not so
Yeah.
plain. It's amazing
Seems maybe
stuff.
as plainer than it is, right?
That's right. That's right. Beautiful stuff.
I was just going to say, the bees aren't so innocent if you were to ask me. But
Oh, they do sting, don't they?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, this has been really great. Really appreciate that you could take the time out. And I know you've got a busy day. You
Well,
always
thanks
do.
for coming by. I love talking about candles.
I
so
see that. I do too.
Obviously, we've been here for 2 hours.
yeah,
Has it been 2 hours?
It's been almost 2 hours.
Well, that's great. Okay, folks, we really appreciate this. And Bidzina, do you want to take us home from here?
Yes, everyone. Thank you for listening to another great episode, a wonderful episode. I'm sorry, Ron. I actually, I keep stealing your lines. I noticed. But anyways, it's been a great episode. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And join us next week for a fresh conversation about bees at 8 a.m. Mountain Standard Time. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Jessie. Worker
Yeah,
and
thanks for
Hive,
coming by.
Oh, we loved this. I loved it. Thank you, Bidzina. Okay, bye, folks.
Bye, folks.